Welcome to this episode of UMBC's Mic'd Up. My name is Denise Cardona from the Office of Professional Programs. We're joined by Jeffrey S. Ray, professor with UMBC's graduate programs in systems engineering. We'll be talking about his career path, the courses he teaches, where he feels the industry is heading, and how best students can succeed in the ever-changing landscape of technology. We hope you enjoy this episode. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning.
Well, thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
You're welcome.
The first question I have, what course or courses do you teach and under what program or programs?
So I teach primarily in the project management and the system engineering areas. I revitalized two courses that were already being taught at UMBC, project management and system engineering. Back in 2011, I was asked to come in and review the program. So I looked at it, and a friend of mine that used to work at TRW and doing systems engineering with me had a big part in the program. So I knew it was going to be good. But one of the things that I always felt like we could do better in colleges was how to set up the cost control structure on a complex project. So I looked at that, and as practitioners, we always had to learn that on our feet. There was no instruction that we ever got in that in college. So I put together a course on how to do that. How do you set up the project control? And, I put together the course, and it's called Project and System Engineering Management. So it's been very popular. It's offered every semester and usually gets pretty close to full. I teach that one. I also teach a course I created from scratch, International Project Management. And when you create a course from scratch, you have to, put it all out there, get it managed, put the course together, and then get it approved. So it takes like about a year to get the course approved before you actually teach it. And so I've done that with three of them. I did that with a course that's dear to my heart, the Principles of Modern Organizational Learning. Organizational learning is something that firms in the future are going to have to come to grips with and learn how to do, or they're going to get left behind. And how do you look at upcoming disruptive technologies? How do you plan how to improve your products and services with those technologies? And how do you implement those plans so that you can compete in an ever-changing marketplace that is going to be competitive? And those that can learn and learn fastest are going to be the ones that are going to have the best opportunities. So I put that course together. Between the three I created and the two that I revitalized, that gives me 5 courses I'm teaching at UMBC. So it keeps me busy.
Your passion for it shows through when you were talking about it. You can actually tell you're very passionate about these things.
It's funny, like when I first started out, and I'll give you how I got into some of these things. But when I first started out at TRW, we had expert system engineering capabilities, probably best in class. And some people say we invented it because we applied it on the Apollo program and the space program. But when I looked at TRW, we would use our system engineering capabilities, win a project, become subject matter experts in whatever that technology was, and then apply it on the project, do a great job on the project. And then when the project was over, poof, everybody would, they'd go to other projects, they'd get laid off or whatever it was. And then 3 years later, we'd be talking about that project on past performance criteria and another proposal. And we'd be acting like we still had that capability. I'd be like, well, wait a minute, we laid that capability off. We don't have those people anymore. And so there was something that we should have retained from those projects that ended that we didn't. And that's how I, way back then, got interested in organizational learning.
Best way, learn from what you're doing and apply those lessons to the future.
Yeah.
So you are an industry practitioner working in the field. And what kind of work do you do on a daily basis that you bring that experience to the classroom?
Interesting question, because I have a varied background. I have a degree in law. I'm licensed attorney in 3 states. I'm a professional engineer in several states back from when I used to do structural design work. I got into systems engineering early in my career and became a subject matter expert in that and teach it as well. All those things I learned in the trenches by actually doing them. I didn't learn them from a textbook. And I think that gives me a practical advantage. I ran a software integration and test lab for 12 years. So I know configuration management from having done it. And what I'm really doing now is I spent 29 years worked for a large defense contractor in Northrop Grumman and part of that TRW. And I felt like I was kind of stifled. So when I finally left the company, I went off in a bunch of different directions, just where my interest took me. And one of the things I do is I mentor doctoral candidates through the dissertation process. And so one of my students graduated, and he's in South Africa. It's an international university, an online university. And we started up the Institute of Digital Business Strategy. So that was the IDBS, and that's just to try and help Albert get his foot on the ground with his career. So I've been doing things like that. We wrote a book together, the definitive guide to digital business strategy, just in case I didn't have enough to do with my regular full-time job. And then I've been doing the teaching, but what I'm doing now, I'm a chief technical officer for a company that I started up with my brother. And I also work as a project manager and senior systems engineer. My actual job title is principal aerospace systems engineer. And I'm on assignment to a government contract. And they have a bunch of contracts that are kind of underway and have problems. And so I go around to these different contracts and recommend ways to improve the system engineering, the requirements development, the design process, and also the project management approaches that are taken to the projects. Sometimes you'll see a statement of work that's like 2 or 3 pages. By the time I'm done, it's 30 pages. It's just knowing what is out there to describe so that you get a good scope statement so the contractor knows what to bid on, and then incorporates that into their plan, and you'll have a lot less problems going down the road.
It's all about the process, isn't it? It's having that
Yeah.
process in place.
Yeah, and there's some problems with industry that I point out in some of my cases too. Everybody loves Project Management Institute, PMI. They came out with the guide to the PMBOK, Project Management Body of Knowledge, and there's over 1 million licensed project management professionals now. And they did some outstanding research early on. I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth now for a minute, but they did some outstanding research, and they identified all the best historical practices to use in project management. And they put them in the PMBOK. And by doing that, our industry became over reliant on looking backwards at the best possible practices to use, and that's what they apply. But really, what we need to teach our students is how you look forward, understand the disruptive technologies that are coming at you, the hurdles that you're going to have to face, the trouble with the technologies or the interfaces that you might have with external systems. And those are what you really need to foresee. And so it requires kind of a market sensing approach to foresee those capabilities. And those are the skills we really need to teach our future project managers. So my class was really good for what students need to do project management right now. And I recently started thinking, well, what about 5 or 10 years from now? So I updated my course, and I put a lot of things in there that they're going to need 5, 10 years from now.
Wow, that's incredibly valuable.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the most exciting part of being in your field? What just gets you up out of bed in the morning, wanting to do the kind of work you do?
Well, the ability to take something that's never been done before, and that's what systems engineering does. Sure, you can have commercial off the shelf or COTS integration projects where you're just kind of integrating stuff. But when you look at a development project and you're going out there and defining a capability that's never been done before, you start up by looking at what you want. It's usually an acquisition of some system, and you have a project around that goal. And so you look at the system and what ultimately you want this thing to do. So you look at the system as a whole, you define the functional capabilities that you want to design into that system. And then you have to kind of materialize and visualize in your brain what subsystems are going to accomplish those functional capabilities. And now as you get farther down the architecture, it becomes more concrete and black letter, laws apply and principles apply. But initially, it's really an exercise in visualization and materializing that vision. So that makes it really, really interesting. And watch these subsystems, evolve and be turned into pieces of equipment that can actually do things.
So it almost sounds like there's a creative, artistic side to the work you do, which is really cool because I think most people think about engineering as just very logical, practical, programmatic, systems oriented processes, but there's that creative aspect, that spatial ability as well that's necessary.
And if you knew my background, you'd know how amazing it is that I came to realize that, because I started out as a structural engineer where everything's very specific. You meet your flexural stress criteria or you don't, so you make the design so everything's cut and dry. But then when I went to law school and started and passed the bar in the law, that's just the opposite. You don't want a single conclusion. You want to make everything gray, make everything an issue, and bring in the facts and manipulate them. And so I had that kind of contrasting experience. And then when I started looking at these projects, and some of the interesting things are, if you look at projects that applied all the PMBOK historical best projects in the new product development area, 95% of those projects fail. If you look at your typical IT projects, depending on what source you get, between 60 to 70% of them fail. And so why are these things all fail? Well, because we're not looking at the future and trying to sense and imagine what these problems are going to be that we're going to hit. And that's what we need to do. Look forward, identify the problems. And so the artistic stuff comes in from having to, like if you look at some of the success factors on these new product development projects, the 5% that were successful, it isn't any of the hardcore stuff that you would think it would be. It's all soft factors like, do you take care of your suppliers, and do you have areas of competencies in your company that relate to the project? So there's a lot of soft factors that really shocked me when I was doing research in those areas. And so I that's another thing that kind of led me to having a little bit more creativity.
Yeah, soft skills are just a huge quality. And I know that our MPS programs and our MS programs, they cater to those soft skills as well. That's really an important part of instruction. Now, what do you think, in your opinion, experts or hiring managers look for in candidates as far as skills and traits and maybe some educational credentials, experience?
Yeah, it used to be 15 years ago, we could just hire some combination of civil structural engineers, mechanical engineers, and electrical engineers, and maybe a software developer or two. We can't do that anymore. The IT world has changed us forever. Every project requires so many different languages and people with different skill sets. I actually wrote a paper on evolving HR human resources to cope with disruptive technologies. That whole thing is about how human resources used to be an administrative function, but now you're going to need them to be involved with the strategic business plan of the organization to understand it so they can go out there and get the right people, learn how to go out and pursue and get and retain these highly sought after subject matter experts in these key technology areas, and then have some kind of engagement plan where you're going to get all these types of specialty employees engaged in what the strategic plan for the organization is. So a lot of it requires aligning of different types of things, aligning of infrastructure architecture, aligning of your strategic plan, aligning of your investments in R&D, so that you have everybody in the company on the same page. My approach, I think we like to sit down and analyze everything and know what those investments are going to be based on a good effort in market sensing.
Now, how can somebody stand out from the competition in this field, like a newly graduated person or somebody who's he wants to stand out in this industry? How can they do that?
Well, I've been struggling with this question. When I first started teaching, I'd say about half of my master's students would graduate and not get a job in their field. That's another reason I put together the project and system engineering management course, because it teaches you how to go after and bid on work. And you can start your own company. If you don't get a job in your field, you can start your own company. In the US, we have small business set-asides. So I worked a proposal back in Orlando about 5-6 years ago now, where it was a $50 million bid 20% of it was for small businesses. So we had to go out there and just grab any small businesses that we could to add up to $10 million of work. And so if somebody can tag on to some larger companies and work a few proposals with them, you'll have people working for you, have your own company. And so it'll be harder at first, but you'll end up with running your own company. And this whole course teaches you how to bid on those types of contracts, how to set up the project planning and the cost estimating so that you can bid on projects like that. And that's a useful skill for small businesses when, you get to know, when some of the larger companies get to know you, there might be some contracts where only small businesses can bid on them. So you might be a 3-person company and you might have Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman as your subcontractor. I mean, so it just gives them an opportunity to do that. And another way to stand out is just get certifications and find out as much as you can about organizations. For example, the Institute of Digital Business Strategy, we can't pay anybody anything, but we offer up internships. If some students want to get some practical experience, then they can do a few things for us and then get that experience, and then we can give them references. And it's just something to put on their resume while they're getting started. And learn how to market yourself. Learn the qualities that you bring to bear that differentiate you from others.
That's a really good piece of advice, is knowing your value and applying it.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, how important is advanced education in this particular field?
Well, I've got 5 degrees, and every time I felt like I was getting stale, about every 10 years, I'd go back and I'd get another degree. And so I really believe in it. I think it teaches you how to do research in any direction, any area. I still have ongoing relationships with a lot of my professors from my last doctor's degree, and we're starting up universities together, and just being able to deal with these really intelligent and special people and keep communication lines open and is really adding to my quality of life. And so I do that with my students too. I try to keep the communications lines open, and mentoring the doctoral dissertation students through the dissertation process is always a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding because you're seeing somebody become a subject matter expert in the narrative research.
And I have one last question in terms of, if you could pinpoint maybe an ideal person to enter this field, what would that person look like in terms of their qualities and their ambitions even, and their areas of interest in pursuing this?
I think you can't come in to an IT or evolving marketplace with the idea that I got my bachelor's degree, that's it, I'm good till I retire 40 years from now. It's going to be constant effort to stay on top of things, to understand that there's going to be need for further education. For me, I started systems engineering, and people still pay me to do systems engineering and still to teach it. And so that's a great feeling. So get in the right field, roll up your sleeves, get ready to work, just slowly but surely. Every day, get a little smarter, get another credential, get another goal, and don't ever stop. And eventually you'll be like me with a bunch of white hair and a bunch of certifications and a bunch of degrees, but it doesn't happen overnight. Just you got to keep working it.
That's a great answer. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you feel would add value to this conversation?
I teach students how to do things. And a lot of people that teach system engineering might take the first half of the course explaining what the systems concept is or something like that. And I teach them how to roll up their sleeves, start tearing down a project, laying out the life cycle acquisition phases, which in the old days we called system acquisition phases, or SAP. So teaching people how to do things from a practitioner that learned their trade in the trenches doing it. I started out at Tier W, and it was a very mentoring rich environment. You could stop any senior manager, any senior engineer at any level in the hallway, ask them a question, and they would sit down with you and go over the principles until you understood it. Is that type of mentoring rich environment. I think my interest in education is to try and give some of that back. You don't really see that in companies anymore. Even if I wanted to go out there and impose myself on some young employee to explain things to them, they're a little hesitant to want to have that discussion because they're scared that you might recognize that they have some gaps in their knowledge or something, you know. And so somehow we have to overcome that and get people in a mentoring environment where it's understood that people have to learn and people have to learn continuously.
Love that answer. This has been an incredible conversation. It's been very insightful and I've really enjoyed it. And I know that everybody who is going to listen in on this later is going to enjoy it as well. I want to thank you so much for your time and for being here with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and look forward to talking with you in the future.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of UMBC's Mic'd Up. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to learn more about the systems engineering graduate programs at UMBC, please visit us at umbc.edu/SE.